The girls at school were in an absolute frenzy because the new student was apparently incredibly handsome. The moment the guy walked in and the teacher introduced him, every girl's heart started pounding faster, and the room seemed to heat up. The guys, however, were not thrilled, just plain jealous. The teacher pointed to an open desk. As the new guy walked past, a student named Chai, who looked like a rejected cartoon character, frankly, signaled his friend. It was time for a prank. The easy plan: stick out a foot, trip the new guy, and enjoy the public humiliation. Perfect, right? But they miscalculated. The new guy, Ian, saw it coming and stopped dead right in front of him. Chai thought his timing was flawless, but oops. The plan failed. Ian gave him an icy stare and simply asked, "Who do you think you're looking at?" No one could guess what was going through Ian's mind as he stood there in silence. The teacher stepped in, asking why he had stopped. Ian just smiled, offered a polite apology, and continued walking. Chai told himself that the new guy got scared, and his friend agreed, thinking, guess the new kid isn't so tough after all. What they didn't know was that the moment Ian paused, he remembered his major's advice. When you return to Korea, Ian, don't get into fights. The major knew Ian was a born strategist, calculating every move, and honestly, that was terrifying. When Ian finally sat down, the boy next to him, Yin Chan, greeted him and offered a quick warning. Watch out for those guys. They're the school bullies. You should steer clear of them. The next few classes drifted by, and Ian felt something strange. Normal kids in a normal school, one talking about his favorite webtoon. It was calm and comfortable. His memories held nothing like this. Every past moment had been a life-or-death sprint in the rain. Years of brutal training had made him cold. When he closed his eyes, he could still feel those days, but opening them to this peace was truly wonderful. While Ian enjoyed peace and quiet, his sister, in another classroom, didn't know the meaning of the word. She was happy, of course, because her brother was finally home after being gone for 10 years. Suddenly, a blonde girl snapped her out of her thoughts. Hey, I need your gym clothes for class today. Had her clothes, but she couldn't just give them away or she'd have none for herself. The girl just let out a nasty, mocking laugh. Then, she did something that grabbed everyone's attention, a loud slap across Da's face. Da had no right to question or disobey. This was her daily reality. Her classmates did nothing, absolutely nothing, to protect her, and she simply didn't have the courage to fight back. When it was time to go home, she noticed her brother. Ian had come to her school and was waiting for her. She was momentarily surprised and asked if he was waiting. He confirmed he was, hoping they could walk home together. He added that if she had other plans, she could go without him. Da quickly looked around and said she had no plans, but it was clear she was extremely nervous about walking with him. Ian then said if she wasn't busy, they would just walk home together. She finally agreed. A short time later, they were walking down the street, and the silence was obviously awkward for both of them. Ian tried to break the tension by asking if she was feeling uncomfortable too. Da was startled that he asked and quickly insisted she wasn't, but Ian told her it was okay because he felt pretty awkward himself. Luckily, that seemed to calm her down a bit. Ian then explained that he was only 9 when the accident happened, so he didn't really remember much about his family, including her. Ian added that it must be strange for Da too, since she was only 7 and probably didn't remember much either. Da remained silent because he was right. Just then, she heard some familiar voices from around the corner and instantly froze. When Da looked up, she saw one of the girls who had bullied her earlier in class. This girl, who was friends with Eugene, the blonde psycho from school, spotted Da right away and started yelling at her. Da grew visibly nervous, sweating and unsure what to do. One of the boys with the bully asked, "Who is Da?" The bully explained that she was the girl that Eugene hated. Then, seeing Ian standing with Da, the bully started teasing her, asking if Ian was her boyfriend. She followed up with something nasty about how she didn't know bitches could get dates. Da quickly and timidly tried to explain that Ian was just her brother. The bully was very surprised, as she had no idea Da even had a brother. After hearing all the garbage talk, Ian quietly asked Da if the girl was her friend. Da whispered, "Yes, they're in the same class." But the loudmouthed bully immediately called Da a bitch again, asking when they became friends. Da was trembling as the bully continued her relentless verbal attack. Ian simply gave the girl an ice-cold glare, the kind of look that could literally freeze you. The guy sitting next to the bully did not like Ian's death stare at all. He got angry and told Ian to watch out, or he'd get in trouble. Ian kept staring, which made the heavy-set boy even angrier. The abusive girl started cheering him on, trying to provoke a fight. Finally, the chubby guy lost his temper and stomped towards Ian. Ian quickly pulled to behind him to face the aggressor. The musclehead asked if Ian was trying to act tough for his sister. Ian immediately saw how clueless this guy was, standing so close with all his weak points totally exposed. What made it even funnier was that the heavy-set boy didn't even have a weapon. Ian couldn't help but think this guy was an idiot for leaving himself so open, but then he remembered what Major Kong had said about not fighting. Ian sighed, looked away, and tried to leave, but the bully wasn't having it. He grabbed Ian by the collar and raised his hand, ready to slap him. Before he could, De stepped in between them. She bowed her head, trying to explain to the bullies that Ian had been living abroad and didn't know how things worked in Korea. The main bully girl just laughed at De for begging, while De continued to shake with fear. The chubby guy yelled at De, saying he didn't care where Ian lived. Seeing his sister so frightened and shaking made Ian snap. He grabbed the heavy-set boy's wrist and twisted it. The guy started screaming in pain, even though Ian barely exerted any force. Ian then dropped his backpack and took off his school jacket. He calmly told his sister to wait, covering her face with his jacket and saying, "It will all be over in a minute." Just then, the loudmouthed bully attacked him from behind. Ian simply spun around and struck the guy right in the face. That single blow sent him flying backward, spitting blood, before he dropped to the ground like a sack of potatoes. The girl and the other bully were so terrified they looked like they were about to wet their pants. Meanwhile, Ian sighed, regretting that he had broken his promise to Major Kong. But truthfully, it wasn't his fault. That fat bastard was asking for it. The other bully was so scared that he hesitated even to breathe in Ian's direction. The scene then cuts to a training camp where soldiers were training intensely. Major Kong was there, supervising everything. Another soldier approached and reminded Kong that today was Ian's first day of school. Hearing that, Major Kong began to worry. Although he had taught Ian for 6 months on how to lead a normal life, he feared that Ian wouldn't be able to adapt after so many years as a mercenary. Major Kong still hoped the lessons he taught would help Ian. As it turns out, the Major's training was working, just not in the way he intended, since Ian was treating these bullies like dirt. The remaining thugs stared in shock at the chubby boy lying on the ground, completely knocked out. The bully girl and her friend were shaking as Ian walked toward them. In a flash, Ian lunged and hit the other bully with a massive punch to the stomach, sending the guy flying before he slammed into the ground. The jaw of the arrogant girl dropped. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. When Ian turned to look at her, his deadly gaze made her tremble. Uncovered her face, her hands shaking as she saw the two bullies fully unconscious. Only a minute had passed. Ian noticed his sister looking, gave the stuck-up girl one last warning stare, and then walked away from her. He turned to Da and apologized for covering her face so suddenly. This only made things more awkward for Da.So. Ian tried to lighten the mood by asking if she wanted to go to her favorite spot for snacks. Da mumbled that it was fine and not necessary, so Ian suggested they just head home. While Da and Ian were getting along, the bully girl stood there, utterly terrified. She was shocked that this guy, who moments ago was so frightening, was now acting like a super sweet older brother. As they walked away, Da gave the bully a small, final wave, leaving her completely stunned and terrified. On the way home, Da asked Ian if he was the one who handled those two guys. Ian said yes, which only made her more curious about him since he didn't look like a fighter. She then told him that in Korea, staring at people the way he did was considered rude and could cause trouble. Ian agreed, adding that making eye contact could be a bad idea, depending on the person, just like in the place where he came from. Da was confused and asked why he had stared at those bullies. Ian simply said he saw that she was scared and he wanted to protect her. Da was completely surprised by his answer and just looked down, blushing. It became super awkward and quiet as they continued walking. It seemed Da had to get used to having a protective older brother. When they arrived home, their grandpa was a bundle of nerves. He told Ian to relax and eat some fruit, but Ian insisted on washing the dishes. Grandpa didn't quite know what to do, so he let Ian take care of it. While Ian was washing, Grandpa asked if dinner was all right, mentioning he wasn't the best cook. Ian stayed calm and told Grandpa not to worry. He said the food had been great and he enjoyed everything. The elderly man looked extremely relieved to hear that. You could tell he was genuinely happy. Grandpa then asked if she also liked the meal, and she nodded. Then, Grandpa changed the subject and asked Ian about his first day of school, wanting to know if anything interesting happened. Ian hesitated for a second, looking slightly nervous to answer. Da also became a little anxious, thinking about how crazy the day had been. But after a moment, Ian simply said it was a good day. Grandpa's face completely lit up when he heard this, looking super relieved and happy. Later that night, when everyone was asleep, Ian was still awake. He was remembering when his grandpa first saw him again and how happy the old man was. Living with his grandfather and sister for a while had begun to melt Ian's cold heart. He then started thinking about the plane crash. All the passengers were panicking, oxygen masks dropping. While everyone else rushed, Ian's parents only focused on getting his mask on so he could breathe. It was a terrifying day. Just as he remembered the plane starting to fall, Ian suddenly woke up, jumping out of bed and breathing hard from the nightmare. His heart pounded, but then Ian realized it was just a dream. He checked his watch and saw that it was morning. As he sat there, he heard noises from the living room. He got up to investigate and found his sister, making breakfast. He asked where their grandpa was. She told him that Grandpa had already left for work very early. She explained that he had taken time off just to be there when Ian returned. But his vacation days were over, so he had to return to work, to put on her uniform, and got ready to leave. She told Ian that breakfast was on the table and made sure he knew he had to eat. After she left, Ian just stared at all the food she had prepared for him. Back at school, we see the bully girl with the blonde, Eugene. It turns out that Eugene discovered the new transfer student is Da's brother. The bully girl nervously confirmed, "Yes, it's true." She started recalling what happened with Ian and got scared, remembering how he took down two of her friends with just one blow. Eugene asked why she was so frightened, but the bully girl was frozen, too terrified to say anything. Let's call the bully girl Chicken Shake from now on, as I'm tired of calling her the bully girl. Eugene kept teasing Chicken Shake about what had happened. Finally, Chicken Shake snapped out of it and said they should probably stop bothering Da. That deadly look Ian gave her was still stuck in her mind, and she couldn't forget it. Even though she was scared, she tried to convince herself that everything was fine because Eugene and her brother were the school leaders, and nobody messed with them. A little later, we see Da again. And guess what? She got hit hard on the head, as usual. She turned around and saw Eugene and Chicken Shake together. Ready to give her a hard time again, Da asked what they wanted now. Eugene simply told her to come with them. When Da asked where, the arrogant blonde got angry. She screamed at Da to stop playing tough and just do what she was told if she didn't want to get hurt. She also added that having a brother changed nothing. The next thing you know, we're in the school's recycling area, and Da is being viciously beaten by the arrogant blonde. After delivering a few kicks, Eugene told Da to stay on the ground. Da, struggling to breathe, asked why they were even hitting her. That's when Eugene brought up her brother. She told Da to warn her brother to stop acting so tough and full of himself. She made it clear that whatever happened next to her brother wasn't Da's problem because he was about to have a very bad time. Da was confused and asked if they were going after her brother now. Eugene said yes and reminded her that the two guys Ian hit were friends with her own brother. Since Da and her brother messed with them, they wouldn't get away with it. It was like poking a bear. Hearing this, Da's face turned completely white. She yelled at the two bullies, asking what they were going to do to her brother. For that, she received a harsh slap across her face. The slap left a mark, but that pain was nothing compared to how awful she felt knowing her brother was in danger. Da clenched her teeth, pulled herself together, and just ran out of there, leaving the two bullies behind. The scene cut back to the senior classroom. You could feel the tension in the air. Even the usual troublemakers were quiet. Everyone was nervous because the school's biggest bully had just walked in with his gang, and it looked like things with Ian were about to explode. But Ian, he was sitting there, cool as a cucumber. The two guys who were beaten yesterday were also there, walking with their boss, and behind them was the #1 bully of the entire school. Just at that moment, as if planned, Da burst into the classroom. She was out of breath. Her face was bruised, and her uniform was dirty. Ian jumped out of his seat. His eyes widened in shock at the sight of his sister's battered face and messed up uniform. The head bully started trash-talking, making fun of how worried Ian's sister was about him. He pointed out that his own sister, Eugene, only ever nagged him and demanded he do things for her. Then Eugene walked closer and told her brother that she would only feel bad for Ian when he actually got his butt kicked. Meanwhile, Ian was frozen, completely horrified at the sight of his sister, all bruised up. But before we see what he does next, the scene jumps back to earlier that morning when students were just arriving for class. We see poor Yin Chan looking terrified as two guys used his head as a target for throwing things. Hyuk was very proud of himself for a direct hit and started bragging to his friend about it. Hajin got annoyed and demanded a nearby kid give him their eraser. The shy student handed it over, and Hajin grabbed it. He took aim and launched it with all his strength, hitting Yin Chan right on the head. He did a little happy dance for making a perfect shot, but Hyuk tried to downplay it, saying it was just luck. The two kept going back and forth, trying to outdo each other in the headshot game. Hyuk decided to try again, winding up his arm like crazy to throw the eraser at Yin Chan. But surprise, Ian stepped in the way, and the eraser hit him on the side instead. The two bullies were annoyed at being interrupted, and the eraser simply fell to the floor. Ian then sat down at his seat next to a terrified Yin Chan. The red-haired bully was clearly getting angry, feeling that Ian was starting to tick him off. Hajin decided they needed to teach Ian a lesson for getting involved, and the red-haired bully fully agreed. In the meantime, Ian just put down his backpack and asked Yin Chan if he was okay. The poor kid muttered that he was fine, but you could tell from how pale he was that he definitely was not. Yin Chan just leaned in toward Ian to avoid looking at the bullies and asked if he wanted to hang out after school. Ian said he couldn't because he had to walk home with his sister. The shy boy looked interested and asked if his sister transferred with him. Ian said no. She already went to school here. When Yin Chan asked her name, Ian told him it was Yin Chan was quite surprised to hear that. Ian definitely noticed his reaction and asked if he knew her. At first, Yin Chan didn't want to say anything, but then he admitted that was having a tough time at school. He explained that in middle school she was really popular because she was smart and pretty, so a lot of boys liked her. But then this blonde girl named Eugene got jealous and started bullying her. Ian asked if anyone ever tried to stop it. Yin Chan said that the bully Eugene has a brother named Jisoo who is one of the most problematic students in the whole school. What's even worse, Del is in the same class as Eugene. She suffers so much bullying that all the other students are shocked she still comes to school. Ian connected the dots and realized that Eugene started bothering his sister just because some guy liked her. But Yin Chan sadly explained that this was only an excuse. Eugene was just looking for someone to pick on. Ian's mind went back a few days. His grandpa had hoped Ian would easily adapt to the new school. His grandpa turned to Da and asked if she was doing well at school, too. Back then, sweet little Da promised her grandpa that everything was fine, giving no hint that she was being bullied every day. Her grandpa praised her, saying Da is a great student and her teachers always say good things about her. Back in the present, Ian realized his sister was only pretending, hiding everything so their grandpa wouldn't worry. Just at that moment, one of the troublemakers kicked the door open and the entire gang walked into the classroom. Hyuk immediately asked the gang what they were doing in his class. Jisoo, one of the leaders of the entire school, simply said he was there to take care of something. Hyuk was startled to see Jisoo and had no idea what to do. You see, Hyuk was a total nobody. He could handle the regular thugs, but he knew better than to mess with Jisoo. Meanwhile, Jisoo's lackeys pointed toward Ian. When Jisoo saw him, he started yelling angrily at his guys because a skinny punk had beaten them. He told his minions to back off, then gestured with his finger for Ian to come closer. Ian immediately stood up. The red-haired bully and Hyuk were totally confused, wondering what Ian did to get on Jisoo's bad side. They both thought Ian was completely done for. But Ian just stood there and asked if Jisoo was the one in charge, the real big shot. Jisoo just smirked, finding it amusing that it took Ian so long to realize who ran things here. He turned to one of his goons and told him to stop standing there like an idiot and do something. You could see the goon was terrified, but he slowly started walking toward Ian. But before the fight could even start, Da burst into the room, totally out of breath. This brought us back to the present, with Ian looking at his beaten sister. Tears started rolling down Da's face as she apologized to Ian for getting him into this mess. Meanwhile, Eugene scoffed at the tears and called her a total drama queen. But Ian told his sister she did nothing wrong. Before he could say anything else, Ian just exploded. He slapped the goon so hard that the guy dropped to the floor unconscious. The other thugs who had seen Ian fight before started shaking. With one guy down, Ian turned to his sister and said that these are the ones who should be apologizing. The heavy-set bully rushed at Ian with his fist ready, but Ian just brushed his arm away like it was nothing. He saw an opening in the guy's throat and delivered a quick, brutal strike like a ninja. The thug started coughing and choking before he just collapsed. The last minion, trembling like a leaf, tried to swing a punch at Ian. Ian hit him hard in the ribs and quickly sent him to the floor, too. Meanwhile, Jisoo's confidence finally began to shatter as he watched Ian take down his crew like they were a bunch of nobodies. The wannabe bullies in the classroom just stood there with wide, blank eyes. Even Eugene and Chicken Shake were completely losing their composure. After dropping the last two guys, Ian turned toward Jisoo and told him that his sister had been suffering because of these bullies, and he wasn't going to let it go. Jisoo finally spoke, smirking and admitting that Ian wasn't easy to manipulate. Then, with a mocking grin, Jisoo threw a super fast kick at Ian's head, but Ian easily blocked it, which totally stunned Jisoo. He didn't think Ian would be that fast. So Jisoo threw another kick with his other leg, and Ian blocked it just as easily. Ian grabbed Jisoo's leg, pulled him close, and punched him in the face. The hit sent blood flying as Jisoo fell to the ground like a rag doll. His nose and mouth were bleeding, and he looked up in total horror at Ian, who was standing over him like the damn Grim Reaper. Without hesitating, Ian kicked the bastard in the face, and even more blood flew through the air. The guy who was acting all tough and cocky was now on the floor, totally defeated and humiliated. The entire class fell silent, everyone's eyes wide in shock as they watched Ian defeat one of the biggest bullies with a single move. The two secondary thugs were looking on, jaws dropped, unable to believe Ian just wrecked a major player like Jisoo so easily. The girls were just as scared, especially the blonde, wondering if Ian was really that strong. Ian started walking toward Eugene, who was terrified that she was next to be hit and receive the same beating. But before he could do anything, De stepped in and begged her brother to stop. Ian reminded her that Eugene and her crew had been bothering her for a long time, and he knew they also came after her yesterday. Da's face crumpled when she realized Ian knew the truth, and she looked down without saying a word. Then, recognizing that Ian was doing all of this for her, she forced a smile and told him it was okay and he should stop. Her brother thought about it for a second but finally agreed and decided to walk her to her class. As they left, the whole room started whispering, unable to believe that Jisoo, the boss, was defeated by a single guy. Even the lesser bullies had to admit Ian was impressive and were super relieved they hadn't tried to fight him earlier. While everyone talked, the blonde girl was just trembling, a mix of fear and humiliation, unable to deal with the fact that they lost. Meanwhile, Ian and Do were walking together, and she was saying how surprised she was that he was so good at fighting, but then she started apologizing again. Ian was confused and asked why she was apologizing. They explained that it was her fault he got dragged into all this drama. She felt bad about the fights he had to get involved in both yesterday and today. Ian simply gave her a warm smile and told her not to apologize for anything. That's what family is for, to protect each other. He then started to explain that where he used to live, everyone had to look out for themselves. People didn't care what happened to others as long as they were fine. But even those selfish people were different when it came to their own families. It was then that we got a flashback to a crazy battlefield with smoke and explosions everywhere. You could hear gunshots and bombs all over the place. In the middle of all this chaos, a young Ian saw an enemy soldier desperately trying to save his own little daughter, using his body to shield her from a guy pointing a gun at them. Despite all the violence, seeing that soldier risk his life for his child really impacted Ian. It made him wonder what family truly means and why it's so important. Back in the present, De pointed out that he barely remembered her. So why was he making such an effort to help? Ian agreed he didn't remember much, but he said it didn't matter, they were still family. She just stood there in silence, and as his words settled, she started feeling a bit shy. She quickly told him it was fine and that he should return to his own class. She said they were already at her classroom, gave him a quick goodbye, and disappeared inside, leaving Ian with a small smile. Back in his class, everyone was still talking about Ian, and he felt a little awkward with all the attention. The minor bullies gave him a thumbs up and asked what they taught him overseas because he destroyed those tough guys like they were nothing. They kept piling on the compliments, but Ian just sank into his chair, looking a bit overwhelmed. Even his friend Yin Chan chimed in and said he was amazing, which made Ian crack a small smile. Meanwhile, we saw the defeated bullies who were feeling quite stressed after being humiliated like that. Their boss, Jisoo, was still very angry, complaining that there was something different about Ian. He didn't fight like a normal low-level punk. His sister, Eugene, tried to cheer him up by telling him to stop pouting and saying it was just a lucky shot. She said Ian simply caught them by surprise and they should catch him later. But the other bullies were silent because they knew now that Ian was a true powerhouse and not someone to mess with. But the blonde reminded him that he's only one guy and they couldn't let some random dude defeat them. Her brother finally told her to shut up, saying if she wanted to fight so badly, she could go fight the guy herself if it was so easy. Of course, Eugene didn't like that and snapped back that he shouldn't take his anger out on her just because some random guy beat him up. Her brother was totally furious. You could tell that Eugene's words really hit him hard. Jisoo was furious because, let's be real, his sister was speaking the truth, and that hurt. Eugene gave him one last look, her eyes welling up with tears because she was so frustrated with her brother's behavior. She silently turned around and slammed the door on her way out. As she stormed down the hall, Chicken Shake hurried to catch up. Meanwhile, Eugene was still completely enraged. She was furious that all those bullies couldn't even stand up to a single guy. She threw the classroom door open and stormed inside. When she saw Da sitting there, she asked if Da was feeling lucky now that she had a brother. She pointed out how Da could probably just stroll into school without worrying and run to her older brother if anything went wrong. Da didn't say anything, which angered Eugene even more. She figured Da was giving her attitude now that she had her brother to protect her. Eugene clenched her teeth and made it clear that she wouldn't let Da get away with anything just because she had a brother. As it started getting dark, students headed home. We saw Da in the crowd, looking a bit down. She was just thinking, recalling when her brother stood up for her and fought those bullies. She remembered him saying they were family and wondered if that meant she could finally stop worrying about being bullied at school. She started thinking about how miserable things were with Eugene, how she was always bossed around and had to do whatever Eugene said like a loyal dog. Every time she tried to fight back, she was just slapped. Suddenly, her brother appeared behind her and asked if everything was all right. She was totally startled, but he told her he had called out to her several times and she hadn't answered. His sister quickly apologized, saying she didn't hear him, and then asked if he was waiting for her again. He nodded and said, yes, because he still didn't know the way home. So they started walking home together, talking about grabbing some groceries since their grandpa was always hungry when he got home late. As they walked, that loudmouth girl, Eugene, was behind them. She looked completely furious and just couldn't stand to see Da smiling. This girl was waiting for the right moment to wipe that smile off Da's face. The next thing we know, the two of them were shopping at a convenience store. Ian was struggling to decide what to buy, and other people in the store were staring at them. All the girls in the store were looking at Ian, and Da couldn't help but notice all the attention he was getting from women. She knew he was popular at school, but apparently he stands out everywhere. Out of pure curiosity, Da finally asked her brother if he ever had a girlfriend when he lived overseas. The question totally caught him off guard, and it looked like he had never heard the word girlfriend before. Seeing how confused he was, Da explained she meant a girl he was dating. He simply said he never had one, which made his sister say he should think about it, especially since girls were drawn to him like a magnet. He was quiet for a second. Then he said he had always been too busy to have a girlfriend. Da understood, especially since he had been busy getting used to a new country. That's when he flipped the question on her and asked if she had ever had a boyfriend. The question surprised her, and she quickly said she never had one either. When he asked why, she simply said she had been busy too. When they got home, we saw that their grandpa had gotten Ian a new Samsung Galaxy phone. Ian was a little disappointed because he wanted an iPhone. Grandpa quickly explained that iPhones have terrible battery life and that a Samsung is better, especially since all the other kids have an iPhone. It was a funny little joke, as if having a Samsung made him unique. Da, on the other hand, was super excited because she wanted a Galaxy phone, and she could tell it was the newest model. Ian started playing with the phone, and his grandpa told them he had already put his number and Da's number in it. Do was surprised her grandpa did it himself, as she was usually the one who helped him with technology. Grandpa quickly explained that the salesperson lent him a hand. He added with a smile that he heard young people love to open things themselves, so he hoped Ian didn't mind that he opened it to save the numbers. Ian simply said he was totally fine with it. Then Grandpa apologized to Da, saying there was only one left in the store, so he couldn't get her one. Da told him it was no big deal. They all ended up having a great dinner, just talking and enjoying being a family. Later that night, Ian was still tinkering with his new phone and actually started getting excited about the whole Galaxy thing. He began to think that maybe Samsung phones weren't so bad and might even be better than iPhones. Then the scene switched to Major Kong, who was working on his computer when his phone rang. It was Ian, calling to tell him he had a new phone and a new number. The Major was slightly surprised by this. The junior officer behind him even asked if Major Kong didn't already give Ian a phone, and the Major said yes. That's when he turned red as a tomato with anger. He pointed out that he gave Ian the most expensive iPhone they had, so he was quite furious that Ian had already replaced it. The next morning, Ian walked out of the shower and saw his sister hastily heading out the door in her uniform. Before she could leave, Ian asked why she was leaving so early. She just said she was running late and rushed out of there. She also yelled back that dinner was ready and he just needed to put the dishes in the sink as she ran down the street. She checked her phone and was relieved to see she was going to be on time. She was late because she had made soup for her grandpa, but seeing him smile when he ate it was totally worth it. She was happy she was able to do something nice for him. But her happy moment was cut short when someone kicked her hard in the ribs, knocking her to the ground. Three girls wearing hoodies and masks stood over her, concealing who they were. The one in front told Da to watch where she was walking, saying she almost broke her ankle. It was obvious they were just trying to start a fight. They demanded that Da apologize for what she supposedly did. The poor girl quickly nodded and said she was very sorry, but the loud leader wasn't happy with that and slapped her in the face, telling her to apologize like a whimpering dog. That's when one of the girls, the one with the ponytail, suggested they all go to karaoke to blow off some steam. Another girl nodded, saying they needed to relax and have some fun. The ponytail girl then knelt down to look Da in the eye. With a smile, she invited her to come with them to karaoke, saying they were going to have a great time. As soon as Da heard her voice, she knew it was Eugene and she was definitely here to make her life miserable. The next thing Da knew, they were at a sketchy karaoke place. The manager saw the suspicious-looking girls and had a bad feeling. A little later, the manager nervously walked toward their room. He was mumbling to himself about how wild kids are today and wondering what kind of mess they made because all he heard from their room was a lot of yelling. The manager opened the door and found Da on the floor, obviously beaten. Luckily, she was awake and slowly started to get up. Her hands were trembling as she tried to gather her things. The manager was completely confused by this and tried to call an ambulance, but Da just said no and stumbled out the door. Meanwhile, at school, the teacher was taking attendance and saw that Da was missing. The other students said she wasn't there, and everyone was confused because Da wasn't the type to just skip school. In the back, Eugene had a smile on her face, obviously pleased about it. Chicken Shake leaned in and asked Eugene if she thought Da was okay. Eugene just told her not to freak out, reminding her that Da's absence had nothing to do with them. Chicken Shake nervously agreed, just playing along as if it were true and they weren't involved at all. The school day finally ended. As usual, Ian was waiting outside for his sister, but he couldn't find her anywhere in the crowd. The crowd started to clear, and soon it was almost empty, but his sister still didn't show up. He waited a little longer, then pulled out his phone to call her, thinking maybe she went home without him. Meanwhile, she was already home. Her phone was ringing nonstop with his calls, but she simply ignored them. Finally, he just headed home himself that he immediately saw her sneakers by the door. He took off his backpack, went to her room, and gently knocked, asking if she was there. She quickly replied, and her brother, Ian, felt super relieved that she was actually home. He asked what was wrong, mentioning he even tried calling her, but she didn't pick up the phone. Da said she was very sorry, explaining she must have been asleep. Ian immediately noticed the strange tone in her voice and asked if he could come in for a moment. Da quickly made up an excuse, telling him she was already in bed because she was feeling sick. Worried, Ian asked if it was anything serious. She assured him it was just a slight fever and she'd be totally fine after some rest. Ian told her to call him if she needed anything and started to leave, planning to go buy her some medicine. But then he suddenly stopped at the door when he saw blood stains on her sneakers. It didn't take him long to realize that something bad must have happened, because seeing blood on your shoes is not exactly a normal sight. As soon as he realized this, he grabbed the first aid kit and rushed into her room to tend to her wounds. She flinched as he began bandaging her bruised face. It was clear Ian still didn't have the full picture. Da told him she fell down the stairs while trying to dodge a bike, but Ian pointed out that her injuries seemed too severe for a simple accident and asked if she was sure she didn't want to see a doctor. She hesitated for a second before insisting she was totally fine. I mean, it made sense because she wouldn't want to go to the hospital. If she did, they would know right away that her bruises weren't from falling down the stairs. The scene then flashed back to Da's past, and we were suddenly in the principal's office. Da was explaining to the principal that she was beaten up by Eugene. However, Eugene strongly denied everything. The police were also involved, and Da kept insisting that Eugene was the one who attacked her. She said Eugene was wearing a mask and a hat, but she recognized her voice and was completely certain it was her. Plus, Eugene had a history of bullying her at school, but then Eugene, with a small, smug smile, asked how Da could blame her when she didn't even see her face. The principal asked Da if she saw the face of the person who hurt her. Da said again that the attacker's face was covered, but she was absolutely sure it was Ujin. At this point, Eugene's mother completely lost her temper. She angrily accused Da of getting the police involved and treating her daughter like a criminal over a false accusation. The principal tried to calm the mother down, but she wouldn't, making it clear she wouldn't do it. Meanwhile, you could see Da's confidence crumbling as she realized nobody believed her, even though she knew it was Eugene. Even the police officers looked doubtful. The mother demanded that Da apologize to her daughter right then and there, but Da stood her ground, telling the woman that it really was her daughter who assaulted her. The arrogant mother grew even angrier and decided she would take it up with Da's parents. She demanded that Da bring her parents to the school immediately. Da's heart just broke. Tears started rolling down her face, and she couldn't stop them as the bully who hurt her simply laughed and walked away without any consequences. Back in the present, she felt trapped in the exact same situation. She felt it was useless to speak up without any real proof and was determined not to upset her grandpa, who had always been so supportive of her. Suddenly, Ian noticed her strained look and put a hand on her forehead, asking if she was really okay. Da weakly replied that she was fine. Ian pointed out that even though none of her bones seemed broken, the bruises were quite nasty and would hurt for a couple of days. She was surprised that he was actually so good at this kind of thing. She could see the bandages were placed perfectly. Then her expression saddened as she thought about her grandpa. She worried that he would get very upset about everything, especially since he had a weak heart. Ian was quite surprised to hear this, and she added that her grandpa was taking heart medication. Hearing this, Ian promised to make sure their grandpa never found out about any of this and told her to just focus on resting. As he started to leave, she called his name. She gave him a sweet smile and thanked him for everything. Ian smiled back just as warmly, but as soon as he was out of sight, her smile vanished. She started wondering if she made the right decision by hiding some of the details from him. She was thinking there wasn't much a couple of teenagers like them could really do about it. As we all know, Ian isn't your average teenager, and it wouldn't be surprising if he already has a pretty clear idea of who was behind his sister's injuries. Later, the scene shifted to a club where the music was blasting and the place was packed. In the middle of the crowd, we saw the main bully, Jisoo. He looked really annoyed as he drank and laughed with his group. They were all talking trash about Ian, wondering how a single guy could have ruined everything for them. One of the thugs spoke up, reminding them that they lost because they underestimated Ian. He insisted they could defeat him if they just planned it first. Another minion agreed, saying there was no way they could let him get away with it. A third guy chimed in that Ian wouldn't stand a chance against all of them at once. Even with all their enthusiasm, their boss knew taking down Ian wouldn't be a walk in the park. He was still furious about that humiliating beatdown, but he had no intention of letting it go. He slammed his glass down in frustration, but grudgingly agreed with his cronies. He made it clear that fighting one-on-one wasn't his style, so they would probably come up with a plan to jump Ian as a group with overwhelming numbers. The minions had huge, evil smiles, clearly excited by the idea. This group of idiots might think they have it all figured out, but they are just a pack of hyenas waiting to get what Ian has in store for them. Just as they were plotting something, Jisoo's phone rang. The caller ID said "little bitch." It turned out to be his little sister, Eugene, and it seems even Jisoo agreed with that contact name. Anyway, she immediately started yelling at him, asking why he was just hanging out at the club. Jisoo told her to get to the point or he would hang up. The girl insisted that he owed her a big favor. Jisoo had no idea what she was talking about. She then brought up how it was beaten up earlier in the day. She told him they couldn't let the siblings get away with this, or they would lose all their power at school. Her brother, with a proud tone, told her she did a good job. He then revealed that they were also planning some revenge against Ian. Just at that moment, someone walked into the club. When the thugs turned to see who it was, they realized it was Ian. He definitely looked like he was there to settle a score. Jisoo was absolutely furious to see Ian casually strolling into his territory, but Ian just kept walking toward their table with total calmness. Jisoo then grew a bit smug, thinking it was great that they no longer had to hunt down Ian for their revenge. But Ian wasn't there for a friendly chat. Without losing a single second, he grabbed one of the minions by the face and slammed him hard against the edge of the table. Another lackey lunged at him, but Ian's hand was a blur, and a single punch broke all the guy's ribs. The bully leader and his crew could only clench their teeth as they watched their comrades being taken down. The rest of the gang rushed toward Ian, but he stayed as cool as a cucumber. As they closed in, he effortlessly knocked one of them down, like a total boss. Then he grabbed a guy with purple hair and smashed him against the table with a brutal sound. While the purple-haired guy was totally scared, Ian wasn't done with him and simply slammed him against the wall like a rag doll. Then he made a fist and delivered a massive punch to the heavy-set guy's face. One of the thugs grabbed a glass bottle to hit Ian, but he calmly snatched the bottle out of his hand and dealt a brutal blow to his face, leaving the thug spitting blood. Another bully tried to attack him from behind, but Ian ducked, grabbed his hand, twisted it painfully, and then delivered a hard slap to his face. Ian shoved the thug aside and immediately grabbed another minion by the face. He smashed the guy's face into his knee, and you could hear a sickening crunch as the bully's nose broke. With all the thugs knocked out, Jisoo stood there, speechless, completely unable to process what had just happened. This whole time, his sister was still on the phone and started asking what was going on, since she could hear all the chaos. Ian turned to Jisoo, and the look in his eyes was so cold it made Jisoo shudder. He asked Jisoo if he needed a reminder because last time he checked, Ian already told him to stay away from his sister. Jisoo was blown away by how quickly things had changed. It's kind of ironic. They tried to jump Ian as a group, only to have their own gang completely destroyed. Ian fought like a true professional and beat them all in just a few seconds that he kept questioning Jisoo, asking what he did to his sister. Jisoo played dumb, as if he had no idea what Ian was talking about, while secretly reaching for a glass on the table. He threw the glass at Ian with lightning speed, but Ian just casually stepped back, letting it shatter against the wall. While he stood there unconcerned, Jisoo grabbed a bottle and hurled it at him. Ian backed up again, dodging the hit. But when Jisoo threw the bottle a second time, Ian slapped it out of his hand and countered with a punch that sent the drink spilling everywhere. Jisoo tried to throw a punch this time, but Ian hit him with another brutal shot to the bastard's face, making his nose bleed like a faucet. Jisoo staggered back, gasping for air after the blow, while Ian remained perfectly calm and composed, not even breaking a sweat. Ian then asked this punk what kind of sick pleasure he got from messing with a defenseless girl. In a last-ditch effort, Jisoo grabbed a bottle, smashed it, and tried to stab Ian in the chest with the sharp end. But Ian didn't even flinch. He just hit Jisoo's hand so hard that the broken bottle fell to the floor. He then grabbed Jisoo by the collar and squeezed, making him struggle to breathe. Jisoo's feet scrambled as he fought, and Ian slammed him to the ground hard. The jerk writhed and squirmed, desperately trying to break Ian's iron grip, but Ian wouldn't let up. He had his hand firmly pressed against Jisoo's throat, making sure the formerly arrogant bully knew exactly who was in charge now. Ian leaned in and asked Jisoo what he should do with him. Jisoo, barely conscious after that beating, couldn't even answer. Ian gave Jisoo one last warning, making it clear that this was the final time he would let him off easy. He warned him to stay away from his sister. Duh, and also to keep Jisoo's sister, Eugene, under control. He stressed that if he even heard a rumor about Jisoo or Eugene bothering his sister again, he would return to finish what he started to really drive the point home. Ian tightened his grip on the bastard's throat, bringing him to the verge of blacking out. The bully, now totally desperate, started squirming and apologizing over and over. After that, Ian finally released Jisoo, leaving him on the floor, gasping and violently coughing as he walked away. When Ian left the club, the staff inside just exchanged nervous glances, unsure what they had just witnessed. Meanwhile, Eugene and her friend Chicken Shake were walking down the street. Eugene had a bad feeling and started to worry that her brother might be in trouble. Just as they reached the club, they heard footsteps coming up the stairs, and there was Ian, calmly walking by. Eugene was completely taken aback and didn't know what to do. She yelled at Ian to stop, probably thinking she could act tough since no one could prove she was behind what happened today. But Ian didn't even slow down. Now Eugene was truly scared. She started backing away but ended up tripping and falling hard onto her backside. As she rubbed her shoulder, Ian's phone rang. He looked at it. It was his grandpa calling. After a short call, he simply turned around and headed home without saying another word, leaving everyone behind, wondering what was going through his head. When Eugene walked into the clubroom, it was a total mess. Her brother and his crew were all beaten up. She immediately lashed out at him, asking how he let Ian wreck him again. But her brother was too exhausted to defend himself. He just cut her off and told her to stay away from now on. Eugene, not understanding how serious this was, kept arguing, asking what he was talking about. That's when her brother, looking utterly spent, finally had enough. He gritted his teeth and screamed at her to leave Ian's sister alone. But Eugene didn't stop, shouting back and asking why he was so afraid of that jerk. That was the last straw. Her brother's eyes filled with rage. He told her directly that if she didn't stay clear of he would deal with her himself. Man, this family has a disastrous way of handling things. It's crazy how they talk about hurting each other so casually. Eugene was quite shocked by her brother's threat and started crying. We cut back to Ian meeting his grandpa again. They found a bench in the park to sit on. First, Grandpa apologized for pulling Ian away from his friends, but Ian said it was no big deal. The elderly man then looked quite depressed, mentioning how he got hurt and that Ian was the one who bandaged her up. Ian said yes, and Grandpa explained that her injuries were bad, but she wouldn't go to the hospital. He talked about how hard it was raising He admitted he never truly knew how to take care of a little girl and was always working just to put food on the table. And he was so grateful that she grew up so well, mostly on her own. Looking back at it all, Grandpa felt that gave him much more than he gave her. He lost everything in that accident, and after the plane crash took everything. It was the only reason he kept going. It killed him to see her suffering like this and not even telling him why. He wondered if she thought he was too old to understand. He mentioned how people say kids drift apart from their parents as they grow up, so it must be even harder for her to open up to her old grandpa. But Ian jumped in and told the elderly man that he was overthinking things. He pointed out that it was obvious how much Grandpa loved and he was sure she loved him just as much. Ian told Grandpa to stop worrying and promised to look out for at school. Hearing that, the older man finally seemed relieved, truly happy that had a brother watching over her. The scene shifted to the Ovenia Medical Examination Center. Inside, Jisoo was completely bandaged up from his injuries. He was being scolded by his father, who was deeply disappointed. His dad held nothing back, telling Jisoo he deserved everything that happened. As the saying goes, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. His mom, a real piece of work, started screaming at her husband. She couldn't believe her son was in the hospital, and that was all he had to say. She told him to go find the brute who did this and yell at him instead. She also brought up that the same brute had broken Eugene's arm. Honestly, it was a total mess. Eugene was so awful that she had even blamed Ian for her own accident. We all know she simply tripped and injured her shoulder, but instead of taking responsibility, she was blaming him for everything. The angry father finally calmed down and took a deep breath. The worried mother told her son to just focus on resting and getting better. As they started to leave, the mother muttered about making the kid who hurt her son pay if she ever caught him. Once they were gone, Jisoo finally asked his sister why she had to tell their parents everything. He explained that doing so only made things worse for him. He felt humiliated that people would think he ran to his parents like a crying child after getting beat up. His sister then asked how she was supposed to hide the fact that her brother was hospitalized and her arm was broken. Jisoo got pretty angry and demanded to know if Ian was the one who injured her arm. She recalled how she tripped and fell, but didn't mention it. Instead, she simply said Ian was responsible. It was crazy how brazenly she was shifting the blame. She then quickly stood up and told him to stay here and get well. She said she would make sure they realized once and for all who they were dealing with. Jisoo was left there, unsure if they should mess with Ian again. Meanwhile, we were back with their parents. The wife revealed she had just spoken to Mr. Cha, but her husband asked why she was overcomplicating things and told her to let the school handle it. The wife replied that it was already Saturday, and she didn't want to sit around waiting for them to act. She started yelling, pointing out that the school wouldn't bring true justice for what was done to their children and would probably just settle for a suspension or expulsion at most. The husband kept arguing, saying she didn't need to go see Mr. Cha to handle this personally. The wife revealed that she already knew Mr. Cha and that he had been handling their dirty work for years. Meanwhile, Eugene was listening and felt quite satisfied that her mother was contacting Mr. Cha. She knew Mr. Cha was the feared gangster who worked for her father, and she was sure this would put an end to those troublemakers once and for all. The scene shifted to a rundown place where a man nervously played with his lighter, clearly restless. Two thugs walked by, looking quite disappointed. They complained about being ordered by their boss to handle some teen drama, and neither of them was excited about it. Even the boss himself wasn't thrilled to deal with this kid's squabble. But hey, work is work, even if it means wading through a mess of adolescent nonsense. The scene flashed back to a time when a luxurious Mercedes sped down the road. Inside the car, Mr. Cha, the mafia boss, received a call from the woman. She informed him about how her daughter's hand was fractured and her son was beaten up by some teenagers. She insisted he must take care of it. Switching back to the present, Mr. Cha was smoking his cigarette, clearly enraged. He was beyond frustrated at having to deal with this kind of nonsense. The scene changed again to the house where Ian was sitting in front of his computer, still lost in thought about his encounter with Jisoo. He wondered if these guys were really going to let it go. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. He heard his grandpa arguing with someone at the door. It turned out the people at their door wanted to see Ian. The intimidating man outside said they just wanted to talk to Ian for a bit. Grandpa, worried about the late hour, asked what could be so urgent. Ian walked out of his room, telling his grandpa he would be back soon after hearing what they wanted. Despite Grandpa's reluctance and even his sister's protests, Ian put on a pleasant smile. He assured them he knew these guys, and it was just a quick chat, nothing to worry about. With that, Ian left his worried grandpa behind. The thugs drove Ian to an abandoned construction site, and he wondered who they might be taking him to meet. When they finally arrived, the lackeys informed their boss that they had brought the guy in question. The boss remained silent, smoking his cigarette. The bald lackey revealed that the kid caught on quickly, didn't make a fuss, and just came along. The boss, a bit surprised and pleased, decided to make it quick. He snapped his fingers, and the minions immediately grabbed their iron bats. One thug told his friend to hold Ian's arm, as he would be the one delivering the beatdown. Meanwhile, the boss sighed and decided to text the mother, informing her that the job was handled. As the boss scrolled through his phone looking for that mother's number, the minions asked why Ian had to mess with the Kim family's kids. As soon as Ian heard the mention of kids, he realized this must be about Jisoo. The boss, feeling frustrated and annoyed, paused his scrolling, deciding he shouldn't call her while Ian was present. However, he looked at Ian and felt intrigued by how unflustered and emotionless he seemed. Just as the lackeys attacked, Ian suddenly used his ninja speed. He grabbed the bald lackey's hand before he could strike and pulled the man toward him, delivering a brutal shoulder blow right to the lackey's face. The boss watched this with wide eyes as he witnessed this flawless execution of the move. Meanwhile, the other lackey, bat in hand, lunged at Ian. Ian ducked, letting the bat harmlessly pass over his head, but the minion attempted another swing. Ian rushed toward the bat as if it were nothing, leaving the mafia boss completely bewildered. With lightning speed, Ian caught the baseball bat with his arm and threw a brutal punch right beneath the thug's chin. Without stopping there, he followed up with a devastating blow to the minion's chest. Then, With a fierce grip, he grabbed him by the collar and slammed him onto the bricks below. The boss watched in astonishment, clearly impressed and stunned by the sheer skill and audacity of Ian's moves. The bald minion grabbed Ian from behind, threatening him with death, but Ian quickly slammed his shoulder into the lackey's ribs and then dealt a heavy blow to his face, sending him to the ground unharmed. Cha realized this kid was no average teenager because his fighting skills were exceptional. He finally decided to intervene himself. As he stepped forward, he scratched his head, laughing and commenting that he never thought he would be fighting teenagers at his age. Meanwhile, Ian could tell that even though this man was a mafia boss, he was still weak, because Ian could clearly see all of his weak points. When the boss threw a powerful punch toward him, Ian effortlessly dodged it. The boss then started a flurry of punches, but Ian dodged them all easily, making it look like a walk in the park. As they continued their back and forth, Ian quickly ducked, but another strike came straight at him. He blocked the hit, although the sheer force made him slide back. The mafia boss scoffed, impressed that Ian managed to block that one too. Meanwhile, Ian checked his wrist where he took the hit, and his hand twinged with stinging pain. He realized the mafia boss had predicted his movements and thrown the punch with precision, but on the other hand, the mafia boss's curiosity had finally peaked, and he asked Ian who he really was. Ian casually replied that he was just a high school student. The boss didn't believe it. In his mind, he thought this kid must have serious skills and experience to fight like this. Ian took his stance. With a grin, the boss said he was ready to keep fighting and closed his fists to strike Ian. Ian swiftly deflected an incoming punch and tried to throw one of his own, but the mafia boss effortlessly dodged it. The boss then tried to strike, but Ian grabbed his hand and threw a punch toward his stomach. The mafia boss reacted again, causing Ian to end up hitting him in the face instead. Mr. Cha was absolutely annoyed after taking that hit directly to the face and tried to throw another punch at Ian. Once again, Ian deflected the attack and, staring down his opponent, he delivered a brutal hit to the face. He then followed up with a series of powerful strikes, knocking Mr. Cha to the ground, leaving him feeling completely humiliated by a teenager. It was surprising to see a mafia boss who relied more on his fists than firearms. Anyway, once the man was defeated, he smiled, noting that Ian didn't look flustered by the fight at all. He didn't know where this kid came from, but he was sure the Kim family definitely messed with the wrong person. The scene switched to an agency known as National Assembly Member NB Kim. Inside the building, 2 guards were posted outside an office. Inside the office, we saw Mrs. Kim and Mr. Kim. The woman asked her husband why Mr. Cha hadn't answered yet. She was growing impatient. With every passing second, she told him to call Mr. Cha. Mr. Kim replied that she should wait, as Mr. Cha would call back once he was done dealing with Ian. On the other side, we also saw their daughter, Eugene, who let out a sigh, and just then the phone started ringing. The impatient wife quickly told her husband to put the call on speaker so she could hear the news herself. Mr. Kim started by apologizing to Mr. Cha, saying he was sorry for the ridiculous favor his wife asked him to fulfill. But the woman, nonetheless, continued to argue loudly, insisting her children were attacked, so she didn't understand how it could be called ridiculous. To everyone's surprise, Mr. Cha said that he was the one who should apologize. Mr. Kim asked for an explanation, and Mr. Cha revealed that it seemed their children had messed with the wrong person because Cha was also defeated by Ian. This news shook Mr. Kim to the core. As far as he knew, Mr. Cha was the best enforcer in the business, and it was inconceivable that he had lost to a high school kid. Just then, the office door started shaking as someone tried to force it open. Both Mr. and Mrs. Kim anxiously looked at the door. When it finally creaked open, they saw soldiers lying on the floor, leaving the couple completely anxious and alarmed. Even their spoiled daughter jumped out of her seat when they saw Ian walking into the room. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving their unconscious bodyguards on the other side. Mr. Cha, still on the phone, quickly realized that Ian had reached their location. He leaned back, letting out a sigh of defeat. He was still trying to grasp the fact that he was beaten by a single high school kid. Mr. Kim was now anxious about how to handle this mess. Inside the room, Eugene stood up from her seat as Mrs. Kim started screaming at Ian, demanding to know if he was the boy who hit her children. On the other side, the man at the desk demanded to know how Ian managed to get into his office. That's when the foolish woman started clenching her teeth in frustration because she was annoyed that her husband wasn't overreacting like her. The husband remained calm and collected and asked again more insistently how Ian managed to get past security. Ian simply shrugged and casually replied that he just walked past the guards blocking the entrance. Mr. Kim was even more surprised and confused, not understanding how Ian managed to beat Mr. Cha and all the security guards. What bothered him even more was how Ian even figured out he worked here. The wife started yelling again, telling Ian to drop the attitude. She quickly started dialing the emergency line to report Ian for assaulting her children and breaking into the office. Meanwhile, Eugene felt proud of her mother's actions. She thought that getting the police involved was a good idea, thinking that even if Ian had impressive fighting skills, the law would take care of him. The arrogant mother tried to intimidate Ian with her threats, claiming she would call the police or even the district attorney, thinking Ian had no idea who he was dealing with. Ian, however, remained calm and replied that he had a pretty good idea. He pointed out that her husband was a two-term assembly member who was currently running for a higher office. The woman scoffed, asking Ian if he knew so much about their status. Then why did he assault her children? On the other side, Eugene smirked, feeling satisfied that she had cornered Ian, and weakly told him that the game was over. The authorities answered the call, and the lady started screaming into the phone, demanding that officers arrive at Mr. Kim's office immediately. But before she could say anything else, she went silent when she heard something unexpected. Apparently, Ian played the full footage from the karaoke room where Eugene and her minions assaulted his sister. The undeniable evidence left Eugene speechless. Her eyes widened in surprise, as if they were about to pop out of her sockets. Mr. Kim went silent, feeling completely devastated. Da's cries for forgiveness echoed in the room, while the vulgar girls continued to beat her to a pulp. Seeing the concrete evidence, Mrs. Kim's jaw dropped, and she quickly hung up the emergency line, saying she would call them back later. On the other side, Eugene started yelling at Ian, demanding to know how he got those files. Ian remained silent for a moment, and then the scene flashed back to outside the Kim residence. Inside one of the rooms, Ian was seen sneaking around the house. He opened a laptop and copied all the data onto a flash drive that Ian the present. Mr. Kim gritted his teeth in frustration, feeling that his children were a total disappointment. But Eugene quickly tried to reassure her father, explaining that she had a good reason for everything. Mr. Kim, however, angrily told her to shut up. Then, Ian revealed that he also had files related to Jisoo. He explained to the Kims that their children always saved videos of their conquests. He stated that he had dozens of videos showing their violent behavior, beating kids at school, extorting money and valuables from their victims, and even the latest video of his sister being assaulted by a group of girls in a karaoke place. Eugene trembled like a leaf with all these truths exploding around her, but her mother quickly stepped in to defend her daughter, claiming that Ian was just trying to threaten them and that he wouldn't get away with it. But Ian reminded her that he didn't start this mess, and that what he was doing now was no threat compared to hiring a group of gangsters to attack him. And he made it clear that he had recorded everything as well. The father put his hand over his face in total disappointment and asked Ian if he did all this just because his children attacked his sister first. Ian replied that as a father, he had the right to side with his children at all costs, so as a brother, he would do whatever it takes to protect his sister too. The man understood where Ian was coming from and pointed out that they would cover Da's treatment and offer a substantial settlement to make amends. But Ian made it clear that this wasn't necessary. The father was baffled and asked what he meant by that. He then asked if Ian would like his children to apologize to his sister. Hearing her father, Eugene clenched her teeth and thought to herself that she would rather bite her tongue and bleed to death than apologize. On the other hand, Ian made it clear that an apology wouldn't undo the time his sister spent in fear and pain. So he insisted that if they truly wanted to compensate, he wanted his sister to never have to see Jisoo or Eugene again. This demand agitated Eugene's nerves, but her father quickly agreed, stating that he would make his children switch schools or perhaps even send them overseas to study. Naturally, the mother and daughter let out a piercing shriek in protest, but the father quickly shushed them and turned his attention back to Ian, asking if this would be enough to satisfy him. Ian said he wanted them gone from the school starting tomorrow. In response, the father said he would inform the school, and once that was settled, Eugene started crying, her tears flowing unwillingly. Just as Ian was about to leave, the father quickly stopped him and reminded him that since he agreed to the demands, he would like Ian to delete all the videos he found. Ian gave the older man a killer glare, and the father could tell by the intensity of his eyes that this kind of deadly look didn't belong to a high school student. Ian made it clear that he wasn't a fool and then began to walk away, closing the office door behind him with a resonant slam. Once outside, Ian finally headed home. His grandpa rushed to open the door and asked if he was okay. Waldo was seen crying in the background. Ian was surprised to see them so worried about him, but he smiled and assured them that no one had hurt him. As they started walking into the house, the elderly man pointed out that the people they met seemed dangerous. Ian replied that they just stopped by to talk, nothing more. His sister then mentioned that something about those people didn't feel right, and that she and Grandpa were very worried. Ian quickly told her not to worry about anything anymore, but just focus on getting better. Ian then hinted to his sister that from now on, she would never have to worry about falling down the stairs again because he had taken care of it. Of course, this didn't make much sense to her right now, but she would probably soon understand what he meant. The next morning, they headed to school. Once inside, they separated to go to their respective classes. Wenda walked into her classroom. She tried to avoid making eye contact with Eugene. However, her steps faltered when she heard the students talking about how Eugene wouldn't be coming to school anymore. The whole class was buzzing with curiosity about what happened, and one of the girls explained that Eugene and her brother were going to study overseas. This news hit Da like a bolt from the blue because her biggest hurdle was finally leaving the school. The words Ian had said about taking care of the stairs she had fallen down replayed in her mind. She quickly realized that he must have known about Eugene's transfer all along. Da ran out of the classroom to talk to him about this. When she found him and called out to him, he turned around, but as soon as she tried to speak, she was speechless and remained silent. Ian simply smiled and said, "See you later," leaving Da in tears. She managed to softly reply with a "see you later" before breaking down in tears, overwhelmed by her emotions.